Crescent moon. Step into the tranquil world of Japanese tea masters. Unwind. Let go, and drift into a peaceful sleep. Crescent moon. Welcome to Sleep Comes Easy with History, where the calming whispers of Japanese tea history lead you to serenity. Let the ancient art of tea making, filled with mindful movements and quiet elegance, help you unwind and gently drift into the deepest of sleeps. Escape the chaos, embrace tranquility, and relax into this soothing journey. If you're ready for peaceful nights and calming stories, hit that subscribe button now. It's time for your mind to find peace and your soul to rest. ZZZ Sparkles. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of tranquility, where each delicate cup of tea carries centuries of tradition. Imagine the scent of freshly brewed tea wafting through a quiet, dimly lit room, the sounds of the outside world fading into nothingness. You're sitting with a group of ancient monks, their robes gently swaying as the steam rises from the tea kettle. But here's the thing, you probably wouldn't last a day in their world. It wasn't all peace and quiet. Tea culture in Japan has an interesting, complex past, from humble beginnings to aristocratic rituals. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and time zone in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Tea culture in Japan didn't just appear out of nowhere, it grew slowly over time. Nurtured by a blend of cultural, spiritual, and societal influences, it all began with the introduction of tea from China, around the 9th century. Back then, tea wasn't quite the calming experience we associate it with today. No, it started out as more of a medicinal drink. Buddhist monks, like those at the iconic Mount Koya, were the first to brew tea in Japan, using it to stay alert during long meditations. They soon discovered that not only did it help with focus, but it also had calming properties that allowed them to slip into deep, reflective states during their practices. Historians still argue whether it was these early monks or the Japanese elite who truly appreciated the first formal tea ceremonies. But regardless, these first interactions laid the foundation for a ritual that would eventually define Japanese culture. As tea slowly spread through the social hierarchy, it shifted from its humble beginnings into something far more elaborate, eventually becoming an art form practiced by those with means and power. Can you imagine sitting at a small wooden table with a master tea maker, watching him prepare each delicate leaf with almost reverent care? It was never just about drinking tea. It was about creating a space for mindfulness and connection, even if the outside world was bustling with activity. In our next section, we'll dive deeper into the first formal tea ceremonies and explore how they shifted the drink from a medicinal remedy to an art of the highest order. Imagine the serene, almost hypnotic rhythm of a tea master at work, each movement deliberate, precise, like a dance that has been perfected over centuries. It wasn't just about boiling water or steeping tea leaves, it was about an entire experience. In the early days, Japanese tea drinking wasn't yet the formalized ceremony we know today. In fact, it began in a much simpler form, often as a casual affair among Buddhist monks or later, as an intimate gathering for nobility. The first real tea ceremonies began to emerge in the 15th century. By this time, tea was no longer a mere drink. It had become a symbol of wealth, refinement, and, of course, Zen Buddhist influence. But these early ceremonies weren't grandiose affairs with elaborate sets and dozens of guests. Instead, they were quiet, almost humble affairs, where guests would drink a simple bowl of powdered tea in the most serene settings. The most iconic of these early ceremonies was the Chana Wyu, or way of tea, which emphasized harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. The ceremony's beauty lay in its simplicity. There was no rushing, each step was performed slowly, with mindful precision. Tea was prepared in a room usually stripped of any distractions, often in a space that could be as simple as a tiny Humble tea house in a garden. The room was cleared of excess, and the host's goal was to create a calm space where guests could forget the stresses of daily life. Even for just a moment. It's hard to imagine this now, in our fast-paced world where a simple cup of tea is more likely to be grabbed in a rush from a vending machine or as a quick caffeine fix during a busy day. But back then, drinking tea was an act of meditation. You weren't just sipping, it was a process of mindfulness. A way of connecting not just with the tea itself, but with the universe around you. The silence in the room would feel almost heavy, as if the outside world had completely vanished, leaving only the present moment. Historians still debate how much influence Zen philosophy had on the development of these ceremonies. But it's undeniable that Zen's emphasis on mindfulness and simplicity played a significant role in shaping the experience. As these early ceremonies became more formalized, they began to take on more structure and rigidity, influenced by the social hierarchies and the growing importance of tea within the elite circles of Japanese society. This was no longer just a private ritual shared by a few, it was becoming a symbol of status and cultural refinement. It was, in a way, a performance, but not in the flashy sense. The performance was in the understated grace of each movement, the elegance of every gesture, and the unspoken bond between host and guest as they shared in this sacred ritual. Next, let's move into the role that tea masters would come to play in society. It was no longer just a ritual among monks and aristocrats, but an occupation that carried significant weight. Tea masters became revered figures, often sought after by the most powerful of society for their skill and understanding of the ceremonial art of tea. You may be imagining a humble monk in a quiet room preparing tea. But by the late 15th century, tea masters had elevated this art form to something far more significant. It was no longer enough to simply prepare tea. The role of the tea master, or soothe, meaning way of tea, had transformed into a prestigious occupation. Revered by the Japanese elite and powerful samurai, tea masters were the gatekeepers of a complex tradition that intertwined art, philosophy, and etiquette. They were, in essence, the ambassadors of tranquility, creating sacred spaces of calm and connection. The tea master's role was not just that of a skilled craftsman, it was also a cultural guide. A person capable of weaving together centuries of tradition with each carefully measured movement. These masters were experts in everything related to tea, from selecting the right leaves to understanding the nuances of the tea ceremony's unspoken rules. They could read the room, attuned to the smallest shifts in atmosphere, adjusting their movements and speech to create the perfect tea experience. They were, in many ways, the diplomats of their time, using tea as a way to foster relationships, diffuse tension, and promote harmony. What made these early tea masters so special was their ability to turn the simple act of drinking tea into a spiritual practice. They followed the principles of Zen Buddhism, blending calmness, mindfulness, and respect into their art. But beyond just tea, they were deeply connected to the spiritual and aesthetic ideals of their time. A tea master's home wasn't just a place where tea was served, it was a sanctuary. The tea room was an extension of the tea master's philosophy, carefully arranged to invoke peace and balance. Every detail, from the tatami mats to the scrolls hung on the walls, was chosen with thoughtfulness and purpose. And yet, tea masters didn't just serve those of high rank. They were also sought after by the samurai class, who, despite their warrior ethos, sought tea as a way to cultivate inner peace and mindfulness. The samurai were renowned for their discipline and focus, but they, too, understood that tea could offer them a respite from the violence and chaos of battle. Tea wasn't simply about sipping a warm drink, it was a way of restoring balance to their often tumultuous lives. Many samurai turned to tea masters not only for their skill in preparing the drink but for their guidance in spiritual matters as well. Some would even seek the tea master's wisdom for matters of philosophy. As the conversation surrounding tea would often drift into deeper, more meaningful discussions about life, duty, and honor, Historians still argue whether this connection between tea culture and the samurai class was purely practical or deeply spiritual. Some suggest that the samurai adopted tea as a way to ease the tension of their violent world, while others believe that the tea ceremony became a symbol of elevated status among the samurai, similar to other aristocratic practices. Either way, tea and its masters were undeniably interwoven with the identity of Japanese society. As tea grew in importance, the ceremonies began to evolve. But this wasn't just a shift in practice, it was the beginning of a more structured, formal approach to tea preparation. So, let's now take a closer look at the first truly formal tea ceremonies and how they began to evolve into the iconic practices we recognize today. You've just imagined the serene world of the tea master. But what about the tea ceremony itself? The first formal tea ceremonies were far from the informal gatherings we think of today, where tea is passed around casually in a cup or mug. Instead, these ceremonies were steeped in ritual and purpose, each step serving a symbolic function to foster harmony between the host and the guest. They didn't just drink tea, they participated in a spiritual performance, a ritual designed to embody peace, respect, and mindfulness. The earliest formal tea ceremonies were relatively modest affairs, compared to the grand, ornate celebrations of tea culture we know now. Yet even in their simplicity, they carried a deep sense of reverence. The first tea masters established a strict set of rules for the ceremony, which ensured that each movement was deliberate and mindful. Every guest was expected to participate in a carefully orchestrated sequence of actions. Tea was served in small, humble bowls, and the host prepared it in front of the guests, demonstrating the care and attention that went into each step. It wasn't just the tea that mattered, it was the atmosphere. The setting for the ceremony was often a simple tea room, with no distractions. There were no lavish decorations or elaborate furniture. The walls were bare, save for a scroll of calligraphy or a simple flower arrangement. This stark minimalism was designed to eliminate the chaos of the outside world and allow for complete immersion in the present moment. In fact, the tea room itself was often built in such a way that it felt like an entirely different space, a sanctuary from the outside world. Historians still debate the role of aesthetics in these early ceremonies. Some argue that the simplicity of the tea room was meant to mirror Zen ideals of austerity and purity, while others suggest that the tea ceremony's simplicity was also an effort to downplay social distinctions. After all, the ceremony was attended by people from all walks of life, from the high-ranking samurai to the common folk. But whatever the reasoning, the effect was the same. The tea ceremony became a space where status was left at the door and everyone could come together in a shared experience of calm. The format for the ceremony itself wasn't rigid at first. There were no specific rules about how tea should be served or how guests should behave. But as the popularity of tea ceremonies grew, particularly among the nobility, the tea master's role became more formalized, and the rules surrounding the ceremony became stricter. By the time of the 16th century, tea ceremonies had evolved into what we recognize today as the Chano Yu style, with its emphasis on the four principles: harmony, Wa; respect, K; purity, Se; and tranquility, Jaku. As the ceremonies grew in popularity, the tea master's role became more exalted. The host wasn't just someone preparing tea, they were seen as a guide, a leader in an experience that transcended the physical act of drinking. Every gesture they made was full of meaning, from the way they wiped the bowl to the careful placement of the tea utensils. Everything was done with purpose. The tea ceremony wasn't merely about drinking tea. It became a form of spiritual practice, a way to connect with others on a deeper level. The guests, too, participated in this mindfulness. Every guest's actions were designed to align with the spirit of the ceremony. The silence in the room wasn't awkward, it was reverent. Guests would sit, breathe, and observe the host's every movement, participating in the quiet, meditative experience that tea embodied. In our next section, we'll explore the deeper meaning of tea culture in Japan, specifically how tea became more than just a beverage. It transformed into a symbol of Zen philosophy, mindfulness, and even a reflection of the fleeting nature of life itself. Picture yourself sitting quietly in a minimalist tea room, the soft scent of matcha gently filling the air. As you watch the tea master prepare the bowl, every action seems filled with purpose, each gesture a deep meditation, each step a quiet conversation with the universe. But why does tea, something so simple and everyday, hold such powerful symbolism in Japanese culture? The answer lies not just in the preparation or the drinking of the tea itself, but in the meanings it carries, weaving through the fabric of Zen philosophy and Japanese aesthetics. Tea's role in early Japanese culture was far more profound than simply offering a calming break from the hustle and bustle. It was a practice, a way of embodying the Zen teachings that permeated Japanese society at the time. Zen Buddhism, which arrived in Japan from China in the 12th century, emphasized meditation, mindfulness, and the fleeting nature of existence. And in the world of the tea master, tea wasn't just a drink, it was a tool for achieving enlightenment, a vehicle for embracing the impermanence of life. In the tea ceremony, the act of preparing tea was an expression of mindfulness. The tea master, as they moved with grace and care, wasn't simply making tea. They were performing a ritual that invited the guest to become aware of the present moment. The tea itself, in its quiet simplicity, reflected the Zen notion of Wabi Sabi, the beauty in imperfection and the fleeting nature of things. Just as the tea master's gestures were slow and deliberate, the guests, too, were encouraged to slow down and take in the moment. The tea bowl, too, was a symbol of imperfection, often handmade. It was intentionally crafted with slight irregularities, perhaps a small chip on the rim or a rough spot on the surface. These imperfections weren't seen as flaws but as expressions of the natural world, embracing the idea that nothing is permanent and that beauty is found in the transient. Historians still argue whether the emphasis on imperfection in the tea ceremony was a purely aesthetic choice or if it had deeper spiritual meanings tied to Buddhist teachings. Some believe that these imperfections symbolized the impermanence of life, a reminder that every moment, no matter how beautiful, will pass. The role of tea in Zen philosophy is not just about the tea itself, but about the space it creates. The tea ceremony is often seen as a microcosm of the larger world, symbolizing the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The guests are invited to participate not just in the drinking of tea, but in an experience that reflects the nature of existence itself. The act of drinking the tea, with its deliberate slowness, forces one to acknowledge the fleeting beauty of the moment and the inevitability of time passing. As you sip your tea in this still room, you might wonder, does tea still carry this meaning today? In our modern world, with its rush to drink tea as quickly as possible, it's easy to forget the deeper connection that tea once provided to its drinkers. But even now, when you prepare a cup of tea, there's a moment, a pause, when you slow down and simply enjoy the present. That quiet, mindful moment is perhaps the most important part of the ceremony that has been passed down through generations. In the next section, we'll explore the connection between tea and the natural world, especially the gardens that became integral to the tea ceremony. Tea masters didn't just cultivate their skills in tea rooms, they also cultivated spaces of peace and reflection in the natural world. The Japanese garden, with its tranquil design and symbolic elements, played a key role in shaping the atmosphere of the tea ceremony. Now, picture yourself stepping out of the tea house, walking slowly through a garden that seems to echo the quiet calm you just experienced inside. The world outside feels distant, silent, even. The garden is designed with deliberate care, each stone, tree, and pond placed with purpose. It's not just a beautiful space, it's a sanctuary. And in early Japanese tea culture, the garden was just as important as the tea room itself. The serene surroundings complemented the meditative atmosphere of the tea ceremony, creating a space where nature and mindfulness existed in perfect harmony. Japanese gardens, like tea ceremonies, were influenced by Zen principles. They weren't meant to be mere decorations or displays of wealth. They were crafted to evoke a sense of peace and tranquility. In fact, many early tea ceremonies took place in small gardens or secluded outdoor areas. These spaces were designed to reflect the natural world in its purest form, without distractions. Without excess, the garden was a place where the guest could experience the fleeting beauty of nature, the changing seasons, and the quietude of the moment. The garden itself was filled with elements that had symbolic meaning. Stones, for example, were often used to represent mountains or rivers. Pathways were carefully laid out to guide the visitor's movements in a slow, deliberate fashion, encouraging reflection. A koi pond might shimmer with the gentle movement of fish, or a stone lantern might sit quietly in the corner, casting a soft glow as the sun set. These elements weren't merely decorative, they were metaphors for life's impermanence, reminding guests that beauty and peace could be found in the smallest of details. Historians still debate whether these gardens were originally designed as part of the tea ceremony or if the practice of tea drinking simply found a natural home within them. Some suggest that the gardens were an integral part of the early tea rituals, while others argue that the connection between tea and gardens developed gradually over time. As the practice of tea grew in sophistication and formality, regardless of their exact origin, it's clear that the tea garden became an essential component of tea culture, offering a space for quiet contemplation and a deepened connection to nature. The connection between tea and the garden was also spiritual. In many ways, the garden was a mirror of the inner world. Just as the tea master carefully prepared the tea in a space of stillness and simplicity, so too did the garden reflect the Zen principles of balance and harmony. Visitors to the garden were encouraged to slow down and reflect on the changing world around them. Just as they had done in the tea room, it was a place for the senses to come alive, as the soft rustling of leaves, the smell of flowers, and the sight of a distant mountain all invited the guest to be present in the moment. The relationship between tea and the garden didn't stop there. The two were intertwined in the practice of kakeiku, a hanging scroll that often decorated the walls of the tea room. These scrolls, typically adorned with calligraphy or simple brush paintings, were another way to create a sense of space and atmosphere. The tea master would often choose a scroll that matched the season or the mood of the gathering, creating an environment where the aesthetic of the garden and the tea ceremony worked together in harmony. In the next section, we'll explore the tools and utensils that tea masters used in their practice. The quiet elegance of these items, whether it was the delicate chasen whisk, the carefully crafted tea bowls, or the simple but beautiful utensils, became a vital part of the tea master's world. Each tool was not just functional, but an artistic expression of the tea master's skill and reverence for the ceremony. Let's take a closer look at these subtle, yet essential, tools of the trade. As you sit in the tea room, you can't help but notice the tea master's utensils, each one carefully selected and handled with the utmost care. Every tool, from the chasen, whisk, to the chawan, tea bowl, serves a specific purpose, but it's also a piece of art in its own right. The elegance and simplicity of these tools are not just functional, they carry deep meaning, connecting the practitioner to centuries of tradition. The most essential tool for any tea master is the chasen, the bamboo whisk used to mix powdered matcha tea into hot water. Imagine the smooth, rhythmic motion of the whisk as it spins in the bowl to create a frothy, emerald green tea. The chasen is made of fine bamboo, meticulously crafted so that its thin, delicate tines can create the perfect froth without damaging the tea or the bowl. It's a tool that requires mastery, precision, and patience, qualities that the tea master embodies in every ceremony. The sound of the whisk stirring the tea is a calming, soothing rhythm, almost like the heartbeat of the ceremony itself. Another vital piece in the tea master's toolkit is the chawan, the tea bowl. Unlike the perfect, symmetrical bowls you might find in a modern kitchen, the chawan is often asymmetrical, with slight imperfections that give it character and beauty. These imperfections aren't flaws, they're a reminder of the Wabi Sabi philosophy that permeates the tea culture. The bowl's design and texture are meant to connect the drinker to the natural world. Holding the bowl, You can feel the slight variations in texture, as if the bowl itself has lived and breathed over time. But the chawan isn't just a vessel, it's a symbol of the connection between the tea master, the tea, and the guest. The way the master presents the bowl to the guest is an important part of the ceremony. It's not just about offering tea, it's about offering an experience. An invitation to share in the moment of calm, reflection, and mindfulness. The guest receives the bowl with both hands, acknowledging the care that went into both the tea and the preparation. Then there's the furo, the portable brazier used to heat the water for the tea. The furo might seem like a simple object, but its use is carefully timed and monitored by the tea master. The perfect temperature for tea is crucial, and the tea master knows exactly when to heat the water just enough to make it ready for the delicate tea leaves. Too hot, and the bitterness of the matcha will overwhelm the flavor. Too cool, and the tea will be weak. Timing and precision are everything, and the tea master's experience and skill are what make each cup of tea a work of art. Historians still debate whether the intricate craftsmanship of these tea utensils was a reflection of Japan's growing obsession with aesthetics or whether it was more about creating a ritual that aligned perfectly with Zen ideals. Some argue that the tools became more refined as tea culture became a symbol of social status, while others suggest that they were always about perfecting the ritual itself. Either way, there's no denying the importance of these tools in the tea master's world, where every movement and every object plays a role in creating a sacred space for mindfulness. The tea utensils weren't just tools, they were extensions of the tea master's soul. Their choice, use, and care spoke volumes about the master's understanding of the art and their commitment to creating a peaceful, harmonious experience for their guests. In the next section, we'll look deeper into the philosophy behind these tools and the influence of Wabi Sabi, the aesthetic of imperfection, which shaped every part of the tea master's world. As you watch the tea master carefully select the tools, you begin to notice something subtle yet profound in the way he treats each object. There's a quiet reverence in the way his fingers touch the bamboo whisk, the way he holds the tea bowl. His actions are not simply functional. They're a reflection of an entire worldview, the philosophy that underpins the tea ceremony, and tea culture as a whole, is deeply connected to the concept of Wabi Sabi. This Japanese aesthetic, which celebrates the beauty of imperfection, the transience of life, and the simplicity of nature, is at the very heart of tea culture. In the world of tea, Wabi Sabi is not just a design philosophy, it's a way of being. It's about appreciating the fleeting moments, the imperfections in nature, and the raw simplicity that exists when everything is stripped down to its essentials. Wabi Sabi embraces the idea that nothing is permanent, nothing is ever truly complete, and there is beauty to be found in things that are worn, aged, and imperfect. The tea bowl, for example, may not have a perfectly smooth surface. Instead, it might have a few cracks or rough patches, marks of time, of use, and of the beauty that arises from these small imperfections. Wabi Sabi encourages a deeper connection to the world around you. In the tea room, the imperfections of the tea utensils serve as reminders that life itself is fleeting, just like the bowl that may show slight cracks from years of use. So too do human lives, fragile, transient, and, most importantly, beautiful in their imperfection. A tea master who embraces Wabi Sabi doesn't view these imperfections as flaws, rather, they are an integral part of the object's story. The cracks in the bowl or the wear on the bamboo whisk aren't signs of decay. They're signs of life, of use, of growth, and of change. The philosophy of Wabi Sabi was born from the Zen Buddhist worldview, which emphasized the beauty in simplicity and the acceptance of life's impermanence. In fact, many of the practices associated with Zen Buddhism, such as tea, calligraphy, and garden design, are deeply influenced by the Wabi Sabi aesthetic. But Wabi Sabi goes beyond the physical objects, it extends to the tea ceremony itself. The act of making tea, with its quiet, meditative pace, embraces the transient nature of time. The slow, Deliberate movements of the tea master reflect the idea that every moment is precious and fleeting. Every step in the tea preparation is an acknowledgement of the impermanence of life. Historians still argue whether Wabi Sabi was formally integrated into the tea ceremony from the very beginning or whether it gradually became central as the practice evolved. Some suggest that it was a philosophical choice made by tea masters, while others believe that it was an organic development that arose as the aesthetics of the tea ceremony matured. Regardless of its origins, Wabi Sabi became an integral part of tea culture, influencing not only the tea utensils and ceremony but also the entire worldview of the tea master and their guests. As you sit there in the tea room, holding your bowl of tea, you begin to understand the profound depth of what's happening. Tea isn't just a drink, it's a moment of connection to the world, to nature, and to each other. It's about being present in the moment, appreciating the quiet imperfections around you, and embracing the fleeting beauty of life. In our next section, we'll explore how the samurai, perhaps the last group you'd expect to be associated with tea, became deeply involved in tea culture. How did these warriors, accustomed to battle and strategy, come to appreciate the quiet, contemplative nature of tea ceremonies? Let's look at the surprising connection between tea and the samurai class, and how tea became an essential part of their lives. Now, imagine the scene. You're sitting in the same quiet tea room, sipping your bowl of matcha, when the door creaks open, and in walks a samurai. At first glance, it might seem odd, this warrior, whose hands have gripped a katana more often than a tea bowl, entering this peaceful, contemplative space. Yet, in early Japan, the samurai, known for their fierce loyalty and dedication to discipline, were just as deeply connected to tea culture as any noble or tea master. How did these men, whose lives were built around combat, honor, and the code of Bushido, come to embrace the gentle art of tea? Tea was more than just a drink for the samurai. It was a tool, a practice that allowed them to find balance and calm in the midst of their chaotic, often violent, lives. Tea offered them a chance to pause, to reflect, and to engage in an activity that was as far removed from battle as one could get. The peaceful tea ceremony stood in stark contrast to the rigid, often brutal, structure of the samurai code. Yet, in this quiet ritual, the samurai found a space to connect with their inner selves, to cultivate mindfulness, and to refresh their spirits before heading back to the demands of war and strategy. The samurai were also known for their disciplined nature, and tea, with its emphasis on precision and care, was a natural fit for them. The movements of the tea ceremony mirrored the disciplined posture and focus required in martial arts. The tea master's slow, deliberate actions were akin to the samurai's calm and calculated approach to combat. It's easy to see why the samurai saw the tea ceremony as a spiritual practice, a way to ground themselves in the same way they would center themselves before a duel. But tea didn't just help the samurai maintain inner peace, it also served as a social function. During the Warring States period in Japan, tea became a symbol of status and cultural sophistication. Warlords and samurai lords hosted tea ceremonies as a way to build alliances, show off their wealth, and connect with their peers. The tea master, with his or her refined knowledge, was seen as a figure of respect, and the tea ceremony became an event where politics and diplomacy could be conducted with a shared understanding of grace and decorum. It was, in a sense, a space where warriors could step out of their armor and engage in a different kind of battle, the battle for status, influence, and respect. Historians still argue whether tea was simply a way for samurai to relax and refocus between battles or if it served as a deeper spiritual practice, helping them align with the Zen principles of mindfulness and inner peace. Some scholars believe that the samurai's love for tea was deeply tied to their code of Bushido, where honor, discipline, and respect for others were paramount. Others argue that it was a more pragmatic pursuit, an attempt to carve out moments of calm in their otherwise tumultuous lives. Regardless, there's no denying that tea became an essential part of samurai culture. As we move into the next section, we'll explore how the art of tea preparation evolved into an expression of hospitality. The tea master wasn't just preparing a drink, they were offering an experience, a quiet, meditative moment where guests could escape from the world and find peace in the simplest of acts. Tea became a way to show respect, offer comfort, and cultivate connection between host and guest. Let's dive into the intricate art of hospitality in the world of early Japanese tea masters. You're sitting quietly in the tea room, the gentle clink of the tea utensils echoing softly as the tea master prepares your bowl. This moment isn't just about the tea, it's about the experience. The feeling of being welcomed into a space where time slows down. And every detail is carefully crafted for your comfort. This is the essence of Japanese hospitality. And at the heart of it lies the tea ceremony. The tea master isn't simply preparing tea for you. They're offering you a piece of their soul. A shared moment of peace in an otherwise chaotic world. Tea in early Japan wasn't just a beverage, it was an act of hospitality. A way of showing respect to guests. When you entered a tea room, you weren't just a visitor, you were a participant in a shared ritual. The tea master's role wasn't just to make tea, it was to create an environment where guests could find relaxation, mindfulness, and even connection to each other. The ritual of tea making was a performance, but not in the theatrical sense. There were no grand gestures or speeches. Instead, the tea master's every movement was deliberate, measured, and graceful. The preparation of tea became a form of offering, a way to show your guests that their presence was valued and cherished. The setting itself was designed to foster connection. The tea room, though often modest, was meticulously arranged to create a sense of tranquility. The simple tatami mats, the low wooden tables, and the carefully chosen scroll or flower arrangement on the wall all contributed to the atmosphere. The tea master had a deep understanding of how the space should feel: calm, inviting, and grounded. It wasn't just about the tea or the utensils. It was about creating a space where guests could leave behind the noise and distractions of their daily lives and immerse themselves fully in the present moment. But the hospitality wasn't one-sided. The guests, too, had a role to play in this exchange. They weren't passive recipients, they were active participants in the ceremony. The guests would acknowledge the tea master's efforts with gratitude, sipping the tea slowly, savoring the moment. There was a mutual respect between the host and the guest, a recognition that the experience was as much about the shared silence and presence as it was about the tea itself. Tea became a space for guests to connect not only with the host but with each other, creating a shared bond through the quiet act of drinking together. Historians still debate whether the concept of hospitality in the tea ceremony was originally designed to be a form of social status, a way for the tea master or host to demonstrate their sophistication and refinement, or if it truly was a way to cultivate meaningful connections in an increasingly fragmented society. Some argue that it was both, an opportunity to display one's taste and cultural capital, while also creating a moment of genuine connection. But whatever its origins, the role of the tea master as a host became increasingly important as the ceremony evolved. And the art of offering hospitality became as much a part of the tea culture as the tea itself. Next, we'll turn our attention to the beautiful connection between tea and the arts in early Japan. Tea wasn't just about creating peace through mindfulness, it also served as a bridge to other forms of art, including poetry, calligraphy, and painting. The tea master wasn't just a practitioner of tea, they were also deeply involved in the cultural currents of their time. Let's take a look at how the world of tea influenced the broader world of Japanese arts and creativity. As the warm tea passes your lips, there's a feeling of connectedness that runs deeper than the simple enjoyment of flavor. The tea ceremony, with its slow and deliberate pace, was not just a break from the chaos of life, it was a meeting point for all forms of art. Tea was, in many ways, a gateway to the broader cultural landscape of Japan. Poetry, calligraphy, painting, and even architecture, all of these elements were woven into the fabric of tea culture, elevating the experience from a simple act of drinking to a full artistic expression. Take poetry, for instance. In the early days of tea, the tea room often served as a space where guests could share their thoughts. And a brief pause between the tea servings would sometimes be accompanied by the reading of a poem. These poems weren't just idle entertainment, they were a way for people to reflect on their surroundings, on the fleeting nature of life, and on the experience of the tea ceremony itself. Some tea masters were also accomplished poets, composing verses that mirrored the philosophy of tea. These poems could evoke feelings of stillness and reverence, encouraging guests to embrace the ephemeral nature of the moment. One of the most iconic forms of poetry connected to tea culture was the haiku, a form of Japanese poetry that focuses on simplicity, nature, and the present moment. The haiku often reflected the seasons, which were a central theme in tea culture. A tea master, during a ceremony, might recite a haiku or have a scroll with one displayed on the wall. The poem's brevity was perfect for the tea ceremony, where every gesture and word was deliberate, chosen to reflect the immediate present. This form of poetry not only highlighted the Zen ideals of simplicity but also deepened the connection between the guest and the moment. Along with poetry, calligraphy played a significant role in tea culture. The art of writing, much like the art of tea making, required patience, precision, and mindfulness. Tea rooms would often feature calligraphy scrolls that were carefully selected to enhance the atmosphere. These scrolls might carry Zen sayings or verses from tea masters themselves. Written in beautiful, flowing script, the choice of calligraphy was an art in itself, where the brushstrokes echoed the very principles of tea: simplicity, elegance, and mindfulness. A well-chosen scroll could transform the room, setting the tone for the entire ceremony, inviting the guest into a space that was as much about reflection as it was about the tea. Historians still argue whether tea culture's integration with these artistic forms was purely practical, an effort to enrich the experience, or whether it was an intentional philosophical choice, aiming to blend various cultural practices into one harmonious experience. Some scholars believe the connection was natural, an organic part of tea culture's rise among the intellectual elite. Others see it as a more deliberate effort to cultivate a space where art and life could blend seamlessly, where guests could find not only nourishment for their body but also for their spirit. The connection between tea and the arts didn't stop at poetry and calligraphy. Tea also influenced visual arts, particularly in the realm of painting. Many tea masters were also patrons of the arts, commissioning works that reflected the aesthetic values of tea culture. The landscapes in these paintings were often serene and reflective of the natural world, embodying the same quiet beauty that tea masters sought to capture in their ceremonies. The world of tea wasn't just a closed-off practice, it was a gateway to a larger world of artistic expression, each form of art reinforcing the same Zen ideals of mindfulness, beauty in imperfection, and the fleeting nature of existence. As we move into the next section, we'll explore the golden age of tea culture in Japan, the time when tea masters reached their height of influence and the ceremony became a truly formalized art form. This period marked the peak of tea culture's integration into Japanese life, where it was not just an elite pastime but a deeply embedded practice throughout society. Let's see how the influence of tea reached its zenith and became central to the cultural fabric of medieval Japan. As the centuries passed, tea culture in Japan continued to evolve and solidify its place in the heart of society. The Golden Age of Tea, during the 16th and early 17th centuries, marked a turning point where tea ceremonies became deeply formalized, and the role of tea masters reached new heights of cultural significance. This was a time when tea culture was no longer an exclusive practice for monks or the elite. It became a refined art form practiced by samurai, aristocrats, and even the emerging merchant class. Tea transcended its humble beginnings as a simple, medicinal drink to become a symbol of sophistication, philosophy, and status. During this period, tea masters such as Sen no Rikyu played a key role in shaping the modern practice of the tea ceremony. Rikyu, who is often regarded as one of the most influential figures in tea history, revolutionized the way tea was prepared and served. His philosophy emphasized simplicity, humility, and the importance of connecting with the moment. Rikyu's approach to tea was so deeply rooted in Zen principles that it almost became a spiritual practice. Every movement, every gesture, and every object in the ceremony had meaning. His tea rooms, often small and modest, reflected this ideal of simplicity. For Rikyu, it wasn't about grandeur, it was about creating a space that invited stillness and reflection. This period also saw the rise of the Wabi Cha style of tea, which was inspired by the Wabi Sabi philosophy we discussed earlier. Unlike the earlier, more elaborate tea ceremonies that were associated with the aristocracy, Wabi Cha embraced simplicity and rustic beauty. The utensils used in Wabi Cha were often handmade, reflecting the imperfection and authenticity of nature. Tea bowls were rough, with visible brushstrokes, and the overall aesthetic was intentionally unrefined. The focus was not on outward appearance but on the inner quality of the experience. Wabi Cha tea rooms were often small, intimate spaces, designed to evoke a sense of serenity and tranquility. Historians still debate whether this turn toward simplicity in tea culture was a reaction against the extravagance of earlier tea practices or whether it was a natural extension of Zen teachings. Some scholars suggest that the Wabi Cha style was a direct response to the lavish, ostentatious tea ceremonies of the wealthy elite, while others argue that it was simply a deeper exploration of the Zen principles that had always underpinned tea culture. Regardless of its origins, Wabi Cha became the dominant style of tea practice during this period, and its influence can still be seen in modern tea ceremonies today. But this golden age wasn't just about the tea master's philosophy, it was also about the spread of tea throughout society. The merchant class, previously excluded from the more formal tea gatherings, began to embrace tea culture, creating a new demographic of tea drinkers, while samurai and aristocrats continued to dominate the formal tea world. The growing merchant class brought a new energy to tea culture, infusing it with creativity and innovation. The tea houses became hubs for intellectual exchange, where people could share ideas and discuss philosophy while sipping tea. This period saw tea becoming deeply intertwined with the intellectual and cultural life of Japan, with tea serving as a backdrop for discussions on art, literature, and politics. As tea culture became more widely practiced, the role of the tea master continued to evolve. Masters no longer just prepared tea, they were cultural icons, revered not just for their skill in making tea but for their understanding of Zen philosophy and their ability to create an atmosphere of harmony and peace. The tea ceremony was no longer just about drinking tea, it was about cultivating an experience of mindfulness, where every guest could find a moment of quiet and connection. In our next section, we'll look at how tea culture began to decline during the modernization of Japan in the 19th century. As Japan rapidly industrialized and Western influences took hold, the serene, meditative practices of tea making began to fade from everyday life. We'll explore how this once sacred tradition was transformed as the country moved toward modernization and how tea masters adapted, or struggled to adapt, during this period of change. As we turn the page to the 19th century, Japan was on the brink of monumental change. The country was opening its doors to the West after centuries of isolation, and the influence of Western culture began to sweep through Japan's once closed society. In the face of industrialization, rapid modernization, and a wave of new ideas, the traditional tea ceremony, once an integral part of Japanese life, began to lose its central role. The tranquil, meditative spaces where tea had been brewed and savored started to feel out of place in a world moving at an ever-accelerating pace. The Meiji Restoration of 1868, which brought Japan into the modern world, had far-reaching effects on all aspects of Japanese life, including tea culture, as the country shifted from a feudal system to a modernized, industrialized nation. Many old traditions, including the tea ceremony, were seen as relics of a bygone era. The focus of society turned toward progress, and the quiet, introspective nature of tea seemed less relevant in the face of new technologies, Western influences, and the urgent need for Japan to modernize in order to compete on the global stage. At the same time, the role of the samurai class, who had once been deeply connected to tea culture, was also in decline. The abolition of the samurai in 1876, along with the transformation of Japanese society, left a cultural void. The tea ceremony, once a practice closely associated with the warrior class, began to lose some of its prestige. Even though tea continued to be a part of daily life for many people, it no longer held the same sacred, cultural significance. Historians still debate whether the decline of tea culture during this period was an inevitable consequence of Japan's modernization or whether it was a reflection of deeper societal shifts. Some scholars suggest that tea became a victim of Japan's embrace of westernization, which sought to replace traditional practices with new, global standards. Others argue that the decline of tea culture wasn't about modernization but about the changing role of tea in an increasingly urbanized and fast-paced society. Regardless of the cause, it's clear that tea culture, once central to Japanese life, was no longer as pervasive by the end of the 19th century. Yet, the art of tea didn't disappear entirely. Tea masters, particularly those aligned with the Urasenke, Omodazenke, and Mushinokoji-senke schools, continued to preserve the rituals and teachings of the tea ceremony. They faced a delicate balancing act, how to adapt their ancient traditions to a new world that seemed to have little time for quiet reflection. In many cases, the tea ceremony was redefined, not as a widespread practice, but as a niche cultural pursuit, beloved by those seeking to maintain a connection to Japan's past. The tea ceremony also began to be embraced as a symbol of Japan's unique cultural identity in the face of Western imperialism. In the early 20th century, when Japan was asserting itself as a world power, tea became a form of national pride. The image of the tea master, with their quiet precision and spiritual depth, became a symbol of Japan's cultural refinement. Even as the country's industrial machine hummed ever louder, tea, once a practice that connected people to nature and mindfulness, was now also a tool for cultural diplomacy, reminding the world of Japan's centuries-old traditions. In the next section, we'll look at the continued evolution of tea culture in the modern world. Despite its decline in some circles, tea is far from forgotten. Today, the tea ceremony exists in a form that both honors its past and adapts to contemporary tastes. We'll explore how modern tea masters are keeping the traditions alive while making space for innovation, and how tea is being celebrated once again as a symbol of peace, beauty, and reflection in a fast-paced world. Fast forward to the present day, and you might be surprised to find that tea culture, far from disappearing into the past, is thriving in new and unexpected ways. While the traditional tea ceremony is still practiced by dedicated tea masters, the essence of tea has found a way to weave itself into the modern world, adapting and evolving to meet the needs of contemporary society. In a world of instant gratification, fast-paced lives, and constant connectivity, tea remains a quiet refuge, a space for reflection and mindfulness that offers a momentary escape from the noise of the world. Modern tea ceremonies are not held in the same intimate, enclosed rooms of the past, but they still embody the spirit of Wabi Sabi, embracing simplicity, imperfection, and the fleeting nature of time. Tea has taken on new forms in the modern world, with cafes and tea houses becoming popular gathering spots where people can slow down, engage in conversation, or simply take a break from their busy lives. Yet even in these more casual settings, the essence of the ceremony remains: the careful preparation of tea, the mindfulness with which it's served, and the stillness it invites into the space. Interestingly, the rise of mindfulness and wellness movements in the 21st century has brought with it a renewed interest in the deeper, spiritual aspects of tea culture. Many people now seek out tea not just for its flavor or health benefits but for the experience it offers, an opportunity to pause, breathe, and reconnect with themselves in a world that often moves too quickly. Tea is no longer just a drink, it's a ritual, a practice of mindfulness that echoes the meditative qualities of the traditional tea ceremony. This resurgence in interest is especially evident in the growing popularity of matcha, the powdered green tea that once played a central role in Japanese tea culture. Matcha has become a global phenomenon, embraced by wellness enthusiasts and foodies alike. But beyond its trendy status, matcha carries the same Zen principles that have always defined tea culture: a deep respect for the process, the quiet joy of preparation, and the beauty of the present moment. Many modern tea shops and cafes incorporate elements of the tea ceremony into their experience. From the careful whisking of matcha to the appreciation of its rich flavor and vibrant color. In a way, the popularity of matcha is a bridge between the past and the present, keeping the traditions of the tea ceremony alive in the modern world while making them accessible to a new generation. But it's not just matcha that's enjoying a resurgence. Traditional loose-leaf teas, such as sencha and genmaicha, are also gaining popularity as people rediscover the ritual of brewing tea the old-fashioned way. The process of steeping tea leaves, watching the color change as the water infuses with the essence of the leaves, offers a sense of calm and ritual that many people are craving. This simple act of brewing tea has become a form of self-care, a way to slow down and take a breath in the middle of a busy day. As tea culture continues to evolve, it's clear that the essence of the tea ceremony is far from lost. Tea, in all its forms, remains a powerful symbol of connection to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. The quiet moments shared over a cup of tea continue to offer us an opportunity to pause, reflect, and appreciate the fleeting beauty of life. In an age that often feels rushed and disconnected, tea offers a reminder that sometimes the best thing we can do is slow down and savor the moment. In our final section, we'll wind down by reflecting on the journey tea has taken, from its humble origins as a medicinal brew to its status as a global cultural symbol. The story of tea is a story of transformation, of how a simple, everyday ritual became a profound art form that continues to shape our lives in subtle yet meaningful ways. So, as we conclude our exploration of tea culture, let's take a moment to appreciate the beauty of this ancient tradition, and to honor the quiet, meditative moments that tea still offers us today. As we near the end of our journey through the world of Japanese tea culture, it's impossible not to reflect on the profound impact that tea has had, not only on Japanese society but on the global stage. What began as a humble medicinal drink has transformed into a rich, multifaceted tradition that continues to inspire mindfulness, creativity, and connection across cultures. From its modest beginnings in Buddhist monasteries to its rise as a symbol of sophistication and Zen philosophy, tea has proven to be far more than just a drink. It's a practice, a way of life, and a reminder to embrace the present moment. Tea culture, like life itself, is ever-changing, adapting to the world around it while staying rooted in timeless values. As Japan modernized and the world became more interconnected, tea faced challenges, yet it managed to endure. Whether in the intimate tea rooms of ancient Japan or in the bustling cafes of today, tea remains a powerful force for bringing people together and encouraging a slower, more thoughtful pace of life. The essence of the tea ceremony has not been lost, it's merely evolved. In the modern world, tea continues to offer a space for reflection, for pause, and for connection. It invites us to slow down and savor the moment, to appreciate the fleeting beauty of life, and to embrace the imperfection that makes each cup of tea unique. In a society that often feels rushed and chaotic, tea provides us with an opportunity to reset, to center ourselves, and to find peace in the simplest of acts. Whether you're sipping a bowl of matcha, enjoying a cup of sencha, or experimenting with new blends, tea holds the power to remind us of something profound, that the beauty of life lies in the quiet moments, in the imperfection, and in the fleeting passage of time. The lessons of tea culture, mindfulness, respect, simplicity, are as relevant today as they were centuries ago. By embracing these principles, we can create spaces of stillness in our own lives, no matter how busy or chaotic they may be. As we wind down, let's take one last moment to reflect on the quiet wisdom that tea offers us. In the slow, deliberate process of preparing and drinking tea, we're reminded of the importance of being present. We're reminded to appreciate the beauty in imperfection and to embrace the fleeting nature of life. The quiet moments shared over a cup of tea are a reflection of the broader rhythms of life itself, impermanent, ever-changing, and yet filled with meaning. So, as you sip your tea, wherever you may be, know that you are part of a long tradition, a tradition that spans centuries, cultures, and continents. Tea, in all its forms, continues to be a source of connection, reflection, and peace. And in this fast-paced world, that's something worth holding on to. Now, as we close our journey, I invite you to carry the calmness of tea with you into your own life. May the simplicity, mindfulness, and beauty of tea continue to inspire moments of peace and reflection. And may you find quiet joy in the smallest of rituals.